Well, the first COVID-19 vaccine tested in the U.S. revved up people's immune systems just the way scientists had hoped. This is an experimental vaccine and is developed by the National Institutes of Health and Moderna. They'll start its most important step in a couple of weeks. It'll be a 30,000-person study to prove if the shots are really strong enough to protect against the virus. To break this down, we have vaccine expert and CEO and chairman of GeoVax, David Dodd. David, good to see you. Weigh in on that for me. This is Moderna here announcing this immune response in a positive manner. Well, they did. 45 individuals were tested here. Even Dr. Fauci weighing in saying no matter how you slice it, this is very good news. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, first of all, we've compressed over 6 years of normal work into 6 months, and everybody in industry and the government and throughout the world ought to be applauded for doing that. I mean, it's just been a tremendous effort and all. The Moderna announcement is promising. It's necessary to demonstrate antibody responses, but it's not sufficient to say that one has protection, because in addition to antibody responses, one has to look at the T-cell responses. And the only way one can eventually determine whether or not protection is achieved is through the very large phase 3 trials, such as they're going to be going through, or an indication of such through an animal challenge model, which some companies are doing, but others have skirted during this time. So it's very promising, but it certainly is not indicative of protection. We've demonstrated antibody responses even greater than what you saw in the Moderna COVID-19 against HIV for over 20 years, and yet we still do not have a vaccine that prevents it. So it's very important to achieve that. It is necessary, but it is insufficient to say that we're on the path to protection at this time. But let's all be hopeful, because we want to see vaccines out there sooner rather than later.
Sure, and we're going into this next phase of the trial, I believe, again, a 30,000-person study here. What does that look like? How long would this trial last? And then if that's successful, David, what is the next step?
Well, if this trial will be started very soon. It'll be completed by year end, and if the results were to be positive, showing that not only safety but efficacy as well as durability. Keep in mind the Moderna vaccine will probably require at least 2 doses. That creates sort of a practicality, feasibility issue when you get into distribution out in the marketplace. But the fact that they and others have already gone in and started spending all the tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars for manufacturing means that at the point that we have a vaccine that we believe is sufficient as well as practical to be able to distribute, we'll be able to move into distribution faster than ever before, almost immediately. That's been behind the plan, was to go ahead at risk, set everything up for supply, manufacturing, so that whatever vaccine works, that vaccine is ready to go straight into distribution. You have minimal quantities, maybe 100 million doses, which is what people are trying to target for the United States.
All right, real quick, just really quick here. Right, if we're moving into the end of the year here, we've talked about the vaccine being available possibly by the end of the year, the beginning of next year. Are we still on that timetable?
It may be. That is an optimistic timetable. Certainly, if one were to say by mid-year next year, we're on that timetable, and it would be in between the beginning of the year and June of next year. But we're on a timetable that, again, is compressing what normally takes a minimum, the best ever, of 6 years into what would be essentially 1 year.
Yeah. All right. I'll leave it right there. David Dodd, vaccine expert. Thank you so much for coming on. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Coming up, unrest across the country continues as calls to defund the police and attacks on law enforcement continue. President Trump says he stands for law and order. So why aren't more Republicans speaking out against the violence? We'll talk about that on National Report next.